Change is here. Digital currencies exist. Blockchain technology is real. The world that Satoshi Nakamoto, author of the Bitcoin white paper, envisioned, and others are building, is an unstoppable force. We should not attempt to deter this innovation, and governments cannot stop this innovation. And those that have tried have already failed. Change is here. Digital currencies exist.
Only an autonomous system can be free, and Hal understood this. Bitcoin isn't just a digital currency. It's a means to absolute independence.
One thing was revolutionary. It was determined, in the spirit of absolute sovereignty, that the costs of maintaining the system would be paid with the currency of the system.
Bitcoin is the new gold, digital gold. Like with gold, the quantity of Bitcoin is limited. Like with gold, the more prospectors there are, the more difficult it is to find them.
Database. Then he has to coordinate with everyone else to make sure that everyone agrees that this is kind of okay thing to do.
More difficult to hack 20,000 or 100,000 computers to modify the database than to hack the computer of a single bank.
To send you a Bitcoin, I need to make a transaction. This takes place in a transaction group and is done by Bitcoin miners. They combine their computing power in a mining pool and generate a block. The miners compete to validate the transaction block. The Bitcoin blockchain is the registry that records all Bitcoin transactions, and it's been that way since the very first transaction.
The more time passes, the more a transaction is secured by previous transactions. To modify one, you'd have to modify them all on thousands of computers. The system is not flawless, but almost.
Mining is very important to ensure the security of the system.
People are worried that Bitcoin mining is using too many natural resources and is polluting the environment disproportionately. Of course, they're right. Sure, it's using power, of course. It's not a free resource. But we have to see it not only as a cost, but we have to see it as an investment. We're let's say, spending all this power and energy on Bitcoin. What are we getting?
Protecting privacy has a price, a high price. Cryptocurrency opponents pretend not to know that the entire digital world lives at the expense of our planet. Every virtual act leaves traces in the form of digital pollution. I'm not just talking about my program. Much of our life takes place online. Bitcoin is as useful as social networks and streaming services, and it will stay that way.
Right? More and more people are hearing about it, the philosophy behind it, owning your own data and being against the banks.
I had conceived Bitcoin as a limited resource from the beginning. The amount that can be mined is fixed and decreases little by little. One day the source will run dry. My disappearance had unleashed my creation. The value of Bitcoin spiraled out of control. Bitcoin became an extremely volatile speculative asset because of fluctuations in supply and demand. One day you could buy a pizza for 1 Bitcoin. The next, you could buy a sports car. A bit too volatile for a currency.
People talked about Bitcoin to the US Congress. There's a lot of companies that raised money to go build products and services. Bitcoin hitting $1,000 really blew people's minds that this was like a new technology, a new valuable money.
Of course it's growing.
His brilliance was in the monetary policy. He invented, pure digital scarcity with Bitcoin's 21 million hard cap. There will only be 21 million. There will never be more.
And because nobody trusts anybody, we can all trust the ultimate result because it's been checked by so many thousands of computers, because it's so difficult to tell a lie on the Bitcoin network.
When it comes to guaranteeing the value of Bitcoin, it is more sound than the gold standard. Bitcoin does not depend on anyone. It's supported by an entire network. There's no central bank. It's a transparent, dispersed registry that can't be attacked. A system so widely distributed can't be stopped, can't be captured. It's a fortress.
$2 trillion in value after
让你最兴奋的一件事情是什么？
以太坊的生态这么成功是一个很开心的事情。
这样的一件事情又是什么
？2014年我开始做以太坊的时候，但是比特币的社区都说 no， 你们是骗局，比特币是唯一的货币，你们不要打破我们的垄断。
People into the financial system. Potentially out there. I think these technologies really have transformative potential in terms of bringing more people into the financial system, giving businesses and consumers easy access to low-cost digital payments, which will certainly be a boon for them, making international payments much more efficient, which is good for exporters and importers, even economic migrants, sending remittances back to their home countries. But certainly all of these benefits do come with some cautionary notes attached. Potentially out there. I think these technologies really have transformative potential in terms of bringing more people into the financial system, giving businesses and consumers easy access to low-cost digital payments, which will certainly be a boon for them, making international payments much more efficient, which is good for exporters and importers, even economic migrants, sending remittances back to their home countries. But certainly all of these benefits do come with some cautionary notes attached. Potentially out there.
Kristalina, is there an inevitability about central bank digital coins? Because I know much of the work that you've done, and I remember a conversation between you and I about certain nations that are adopting Bitcoin as a national currency of the future. And I'll always remember your response to me, which was just because you can doesn't mean you should. But when we're talking about central bank digital coins, there are clear benefits. What are some of the issues and concerns that you're already seeing? Because there are nations that are already adopting central bank digital coins and they're just getting a sense of how they're working.
It is very important to first think why you want to have central bank digital currency, what are your objectives, and then about the technology that you're going to apply. And of course, the question of interoperability with other central bank digital currencies is paramount. Otherwise, we would be in a fragmented world, and on one level, we would get fast operations within those that have access to a particular CBDC, and on another level, we would have difficulties in transacting across. In other words, how do we build tunnels that connect CBDCs in a way that makes the world of tomorrow one that allows economic integration, facilitates trade, and as a result, helps us to have more jobs and better standards of living. So when we look at the risks today. We see two. One, how are CBDCs designed vis-a-vis the role of banks and also private sector digital money? Do we risk this integration of how money flows into the economy? In other words, are we going to strengthen or weaken the intermediation function that banks are playing? And two, how is the capacity of the private sector to onboard consumers, clients in a way that a central bank has not done in the past? How is this going to be integrated? This is a very important question for the efficiency of the financial system. And then we come into, are central banks going to be constantly revamping their technological capabilities to serve millions of consumers? How do they integrate their function with the function of private money providers? Augustine said something very important. In my country, we have a saying, rush slowly when you're doing something important. And that is exactly the case today. And what we see very clearly is the need of bringing countries together to compare notes so they actually experiment with knowledge of what others are doing, and we have a better chance to step into this digital future without too many policy mistakes made. Rush slowly.
Rush slowly. I'm writing that down because I love it. Your point about interoperability ties me to the next conversation that I want to have, and we'll address this, I think. I'll ask you both to address this when we come back to it, but it's in light of what we've seen with the war in Ukraine. I spoke to Ukraine's deputy digital minister a couple of weeks ago, and
Bitcoin has been on a tear. How bullish are you on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and how much do you believe they will fundamentally transform our economy?
When we talk about blockchain, we can come back and talk about the infrastructure. That's the highways and the pipes that are necessary for Bitcoin, but they're necessary for many other applications. And I think they're very useful, and I'm very bullish on that. Talk about blockchain, we can come back and talk about the infrastructure. That's the highways and the pipes that are necessary for Bitcoin, but they're necessary for many other applications. And I think they're very useful, and I'm very bullish on that. When you talk about Bitcoin in itself, I don't have a strong opinion on Bitcoin. In essence, I'm not a strong believer in Bitcoin. It is a developing asset, potentially. And for all the reasons it's a strong developing asset class, it may fail. Remember, part of the integrity of an asset class, or part of the integrity of a system, is knowing who owns it, and knowing who has it, and knowing why it's being transferred. And is it being used for legitimate causes? Is it being used for good? Or is it being used for illegitimate causes? Is it being used in corrupt practices and corrupt ways? The Bitcoin system today has no transparency to it. So there are a lot of people that question, why would you need a system that does not have an audit trail, does not have integrity? You don't know who owns it. You don't know exactly how much exists today, how much has been mined, how much has been lost, how much has been thrown away on hard drives because they don't exist anymore. So it lacks some of the basic integrities of a real market. And then you have to get into the idea or the concept that it's a theoretical value. It's a theoretical value. And there's a lot of other things that have this. It's a theoretical value because someone is willing to buy it or someone is willing to sell it at that price today. But there's nothing tangible behind it.
Should the Fed in a new administration be approaching alternative assets?
Well, I think the government will look at them. We went through a fad in the last 4 years where there was this whole new idea where we were going to create new coins, where we were going to coin everything, where we're going to...
So how does the payments landscape look different then in, let's say, a decade? Does cash disappear in this unprecedented economy and new economic activity that we're seeing?
Well, I think cash can easily disappear. I mean, the idea of paper currency in the legitimate world is becoming more and more obsolete. And I believe it could become totally obsolete. But the fintech payment systems are also not going to replace the banks. There's a big difference between a fintech payment system and a fintech ability to move cash and the banking systems. And remember, the banking systems are big, they're highly regulated, and they're regulated again to protect investors. They're regulated to protect depositories. So the question is, how does the money get into the money movements?
When You Dish Upon a Star from 1990 buys 20th Century Fox, Season 10, Episode 5. In the episode When You Dish Upon a Star from 1990 buys 20th Century Fox, Season 10, Episode 5. In the episode When You Dish Upon a Star from 1990 buys 20th Century Fox, Season 10, Episode 5. In the episode When You Dish Upon a Star